It was just before 4 in the morning on August 31st, 1888, when a carman named Charles Lechmere walked through the dark, silent Bucks Row in Whitechapel on his way to work. Ahead of him, he saw what looked like a bundle of discarded clothes. As he stepped closer, he realized it was a woman lying motionless. Another worker, Robert Paul, soon arrived. Together they tried calling to her, but she did not respond. Alarmed, they hurried to fetch a police officer. This discovery would mark the beginning of the Jack the Ripper investigation. The woman was Mary Ann Polly Nichols, 43 years old. When her body was examined, doctors found her throat had been deeply cut from left to right. Her abdomen showed several rough incisions, but no organs were removed. Medical examiners noted the wounds appeared hurried, suggesting the killer did not spend much time at the scene. Nichols had lived a life marked by hardship. Once married with 5 children, she had fallen into poverty, moving between cheap lodging houses and shelters. On the night of her death, she had been forced onto the streets after failing to raise money for a bed. Just 8 days later, in the early morning of September 8, 1888, a local resident named John Davis noticed something unusual in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street in Spitalfields. Alerting a nearby police constable, he approached and discovered the body of Annie Chapman, 47 years old. Chapman's injuries were more severe. Her throat had been cut, and her abdomen was deliberately opened. Parts of her internal organs were removed and taken away. Medical examiners believed the killer had more time at this scene and showed a basic understanding of where certain organs were located. Police questioning intensified. Locals, night workers, street vendors, and men seen speaking with women were brought in for interviews. Fear spread quickly, and rumors filled the streets. In the days that followed, suspicion turned toward John Pizer, a local boot finisher known as Leather Apron. Arrested amid growing panic and anti-Semitic rumors, Pizer was accused by newspapers of being the killer. However, police soon confirmed he had solid alibis for the murders. With no evidence linking him to the crimes, he was released. Pizer later sued the newspapers and won, proving how rumor and fear were destroying innocent lives. On September 30th, 1888, the violence escalated. In the early hours of the morning, at approximately 1 a.m., Elizabeth Stride, 44, was found in Dutfield's yard off Burner Street by Louis Deemschutz, who had been driving his horse and cart through the poorly lit yard. His horse shied from a dark object on the ground. Thinking it might be a bundle, he tried to move it with his whip handle, then lit a match and realized it was a human body. He first ran inside to check on his wife's safety before alerting others. Stride had only one major injury. Her throat was cut. There were no abdominal wounds. Investigators believed the killer was interrupted before he could continue, making her case different from the others. Around 12:45 a.m. on September 30th, 1888, Israel Schwartz, a Hungarian Jewish man, walked down Commercial Road and turned into Burner Street when he saw a man stop and speak to a woman in the gateway of Dutfield's yard. Schwartz stated the man threw the woman to the ground and noticed another man smoking a pipe nearby. The attacker called out the name Lipsky, and the second man began following Schwartz, who ran away in fear. He later mentioned seeing a knife but told police only about the pipe. The mention of Lipsky has historical and cultural significance. It referred to Israel Lipsky, a Polish Jew hanged in 1887 for murdering Miriam Angel. The name had become infamous and was sometimes used as a threat or insult within the East End Jewish community. The attacker may have used it to intimidate or confuse Schwartz, exploiting existing fears and prejudice in the area. Less than an hour later, the next murder occurred in Mitre Square. Joseph Lawenda, a Polish-born British cigarette salesman, was walking with 2 friends when he saw Catherine Eddowes, the 4th victim, speaking with a man just minutes before her body was found. Lawenda described the man as being of average build, wearing a loose pepper and salt jacket, a gray cloth cap, and a reddish neckerchief, about 5'7" 5'8" tall, with a fair complexion and mustache. While Lawenda could not positively identify the man later, The police considered his account highly credible and kept him away from the press. Later notes from Scotland Yard suggest Lawenda refused to testify against a Jewish suspect, Aaron Kosminski, fearing it would lead to the man's execution. His testimony remains one of the most important eyewitness accounts in the Ripper case. Eddowes had suffered a cut throat and extensive abdominal injuries. Several organs were removed, and her face bore additional cuts. The precision and variety of the wounds suggested confidence and familiarity with the human body. A crucial piece of evidence was found shortly afterward. Constable Alfred Long discovered a blood-stained piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron and in the direction of Elizabeth Stride's murder site, which had occurred roughly 45 minutes earlier. Above it, someone had written in chalk on the wall, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." The meaning of this message remains debated. Some believed it was a deliberate attempt to incriminate the Jewish community. Others thought it a taunt by the killer. Due to tensions and fear of anti-Semitic riots, the graffiti was quickly erased before being photographed. Days before Eddowes' murder, on September 28, 1888, the police received a letter signed Jack the Ripper, which mocked the police and hinted at further violence. The letter included a chilling line, "I shall clip the ladies' ears off and send them to the police officers just for jolly." Although its authorship remains uncertain, this was the first known use of the name Jack the Ripper, cementing the killer's infamous identity. On October 1, 1888, a postcard arrived at the Central News Agency, famously known as Saucy Jackie postcard. It referenced the previous night's murders, the double event of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, and taunted the police. The writer calls himself Saucy Jackie, brags about the double event, and adds a gruesome detail. He says he didn't have time to cut off the victim's ears for the police. Creepily, part of Catherine Eddowes' ear was found cut, a detail not publicly known. This insider knowledge has made many wonder if this was genuinely from the killer. But there's a major problem: the postmark. This card wasn't sent until over a full day after the murders. By then, the East End was swarming with press and buzzing with rumors from the crime scene. That specific detail about the ear could have easily leaked. So, while it feels terrifyingly real, most historians see it as a brilliant, cruel hoax, likely from a journalist or a prankster capitalizing on the panic. The postcard amplified public fear and fascination, adding another layer of notoriety to the killer's legend. After a gap of 40 days, the final canonical murder occurred on November 9, 1888. Mary Jane Kelly, about 25, Irish, and strikingly beautiful, returned to her small rented room at 13 Miller's Court. She had privacy, a door, walls, and a room of her own. Neighbors heard her singing past midnight. By 1:30 a.m., the singing stopped. Around 10:45 a.m., her landlord's assistant discovered her body, lying on the bed, mutilated beyond recognition. Her throat was cut down to the spine, organs removed and scattered around the room. Blood spattered the walls. Doctors estimated the killer had spent up to 2 hours inside. Mary Jane Kelly's injuries were the most extreme of all. Because the attack occurred indoors, the killer had privacy and time, allowing the violence to escalate far beyond the earlier murders. Her death marked the end of the known killings, but not the end of the mystery. At the time, doctors debated whether the killer had medical training. Some believed he showed a basic understanding of human anatomy. Others argued the wounds could have been inflicted by someone familiar with animal slaughter or street violence. No conclusion was ever reached. By the end of 1888, the murders stopped as suddenly as they had begun. Jack the Ripper vanished into history, leaving behind 5 victims, numerous letters and postcards, and a mystery that still haunts the world. Initially, John Pizer was suspected to be Jack the Ripper, but he was later proven innocent after providing solid alibis. Despite his release, fear and rumor had already taken hold of London, and many other suspects emerged over time. Among them, one of the most intriguing was Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria. Some believed he might have lived a secret double life or been involved in a royal cover-up connected to the murders. These theories, however, were based more on sensational storytelling than fact. Official records showed that Prince Albert Victor was not even in London during the killings, and no real evidence ever linked him to the crimes. The idea of a royal suspect simply added allure to the mystery, feeding public fascination with the case. Another particularly compelling suspect is Charles Lechmere, also known as Charles Cross, the carman who discovered the body of Mary and Polly Nichols, the first confirmed Ripper victim, on August 31, 1888. At first, Lechmere appeared to be a concerned passerby on his way to work who happened upon the crime scene. However, modern investigators and criminologists have begun to re-examine his role, suggesting he may not have simply found the body. He may have created it. Several details point to this possibility. Lechmere was alone with Nichols's body before another witness, Robert Paul, arrived. If Lechmere was indeed the killer, Paul's unexpected approach might have forced him to stop before finishing the mutilations. Some also note that Lechmere used the name Charles Cross at the inquest, which happened to be his stepfather's surname, not the one he used at work, raising questions about whether he was deliberately concealing his true identity from authorities. Additionally, his regular route to work took him through or near the scenes of several other Ripper murders, meaning he had both knowledge of the area and opportunity. Those who believe in this theory suggest that his familiarity with the streets and early morning schedule could have allowed him to kill quickly and then continue on to his job without drawing attention. Despite these intriguing coincidences, it's important to note that there is no direct evidence proving Charles Lechmere was the killer. Much of the argument rests on behavioral interpretation and circumstantial links rather than physical proof. Equally fascinating is Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish immigrant who lived in Whitechapel at the time of the killings. He suffered from mental illness and was later committed to an asylum. As earlier stated in the video, one key witness reportedly refused to testify against him, believed to be fellow Jewish witness Joseph Lewenda, possibly out of fear that doing so would send a man of his own faith to the gallows. This moral and cultural conflict makes Kosminski's case particularly intriguing. Years later, modern investigators revisited the case using DNA testing. A shawl said to have been found beside victim Catherine Eddowes was examined, and forensic scientists claimed that traces of blood and semen on the fabric matched the mitochondrial DNA of both Eddowes' descendants and the living relatives of Aaron Kosminski. The finding made headlines and briefly seemed to solve one of history's greatest mysteries. However, experts soon raised serious doubts, arguing that the shawl's origin was unproven, that it may have been contaminated over the decades, and that the DNA testing method used was not precise enough to identify one individual beyond a reasonable doubt. As a result, the evidence remains highly contested and cannot be treated as definitive proof. Adding an even more international twist to the case was Dr. Francis Tumblety, an American doctor known for his eccentric behavior, false medical claims, and deep resentment toward women, especially prostitutes. He was in London during the Ripper murders and was actually arrested on unrelated charges at the time. Reports claimed he kept a collection of preserved female organs, a gruesome detail eerily similar to the Ripper's mutilations. When police interest in him grew, Tumblety fled England for the United States, igniting further suspicion. A senior Scotland Yard detective later described him as a very likely suspect, though no concrete evidence ever tied him to the killings. These theories show just how wide the investigation stretched, from working-class Londoners like Pizer and Lechmere to royal, and even foreign suspects such as Prince Albert Victor and Dr. Tumblety. Yet all the leads, speculations, and confessions failed to reveal the true identity of Jack the Ripper. In the end, none of these men were ever proven to be the killer. The Ripper's identity remains one of history's greatest mysteries, a figure who emerged from the shadows of Victorian London, committed acts of unimaginable cruelty, and vanished without a trace, leaving behind a story that continues to haunt and fascinate the world more than a century later.